Okay, 7.3, we are going to factor polynomials. I guess the only difference from last semester to this semester with the factoring is that now we could have higher degrees, so cubic functions. We did a little bit of that last semester, but it is imperative that you do memorize these. So the sum and difference of cubes, you do need to memorize. If you already have them memorized, then you are a step ahead. The only difference between the two, if you want kind of a shortcut, the only difference between the two is you're going to keep the sign. So the sign in between the two cubic terms will always match the sign in the first parenthesis. And then if it's a cubed minus b cubed, then you have two pluses. If it's a cubed plus b cubed, you have minus and then plus. So the only main difference is the first sign, you match the sign of your actual function, and then the last two, it's either plus plus or minus plus. And when I'm looking at a and b, you're always going to take the cube root of whatever your term is. So in this case, like number 1, I have a cubed plus b cubed. My a would be x, and then my b would be 5, because I'm taking the cube root of both terms. So if I were to factor this, it would be a plus b, so x plus 5, a squared, x squared, minus a times b, so 5x, plus b squared, which is 25. Number 2, going to take the cube root of 8x cubed, so that would be 2x, and the cube root of 27 is 3. So 2x plus 3, a squared would be 4x squared, a times b would be 6x, it would be minus 6x, sorry, plus b squared, which would be 9. So try numbers 3 and 4 on your own. So for number 3, remember that we had a question a second ago about the signs. You are matching the signs to whatever the formula is. So like in number 3, my a is 2 and my b is x. So if I take the cube root of each term, and then since there's a minus in between, I'm going to match the signs of the formula that is given. So there will be a minus, a plus, and a plus. So you can add the signs in first, or you can add the signs in last, but they'll always match the signs from the actual formula. So do memorize those. So remember difference of squares, same kind of deal. Take the square root of the first and the second term. So I want you to try 5 through 8 on your own, because this is all review, and then you can check your answers with me on the board. So the only thing that I think sometimes people forget would be pulling out the greatest common factor here on number 7. Remember, you do that first. So if you need to get that factoring packet out from last semester, it might be helpful. And then also, I know this did not occur on number 8. I think it might happen on the back. But, so here when you have an x to the 4th, you put x squareds here, because the square root of that would be x squared. Sometimes, and not in this example, but sometimes you can actually take it a step further and then factor it again if you have another difference of squares. So, like you could factor this one if it were 2 squares. So if this were just x squared minus 9, then you could do x plus 3x minus 3. But in this case, you can't because you have the 5 here. So whenever you have 4 terms, you're going to factor by grouping. So remember, when you factor by grouping, you look at the first 2. You pull out the greatest common factor. So in this case, it would be what? X squared. And you're left with x minus 3. And then you're going to look at the second two terms. Going to pull out a negative 16. And I'm left with x plus 3. Remember, you do want the parentheses to match. They must match, otherwise you can't factor it. And so then I'll rewrite it as x squared minus 16, x minus 3. You only write it one time.
So even if they have different...
Oh, it should be x minus 3, sorry. Because when you pull out a negative 16, and you want to get a positive 48, when you distribute, it becomes positive. So you only write the x minus 3 one time. Am I done? No, what do I need to do? Yeah, I need to factor this. So x plus 4, x minus 4, x minus 3. Okay, try 10, 11, and 12. Okay, so for all of these, you were able to take the squared term a step further. Won't always be the case, but remember to always be looking for a difference of squares whenever you're factoring by grouping. So remember, or just try to think, can it be can it be simplified even more so? Can I pull out a greatest common factor? Can I do a difference of squares? So always be checking those things because you'll want it in the simplest form. Okay, so in this example, this word problem, it says archaeologists discovered a huge hydraulic concrete block with a volume of 945 cubic meters. The block's dimensions are x meters high by 12x minus 15 meters long by 12x minus 21 meters wide. What is the height of the block? So basically we're trying to solve for x here. So anytime you're talking about volume, it's always length times width times height. And it gives me the dimensions in terms of x, and it also gives me the volume. So I know that if I multiply all of my dimensions together, I have x by 12x minus 15 by 12x minus 21. And all of that equals 945, because that's my volume. Now, if I want to solve for x, I need to multiply all the dimensions together. Then I need to move the 945 over and then solve it by either factoring or, we'll solve it by factoring because that's really the only way we know how right now. So in these examples, it'll be solving by factoring. So I'm going to multiply this out first. So I'm going to distribute the x. So 12x squared minus 15x. Now I'm going to distribute 144x cubed minus, I don't know what 12 times 21 is. Will someone do that for me? 252 minus, what is 15 times 12? 180 x squared plus 15 times 21. Do we already do this? No. 350? 315 x equals 945. Now I want to combine my like terms, and I also want to move the 945 over. So 144x cubed minus, what is 252 plus 180? 432 x squared plus 315x minus 945 equals 0. So this formula right here is what I'm going to be factoring. This is what I'm trying to solve for. So I have four terms. I'm going to factor by grouping. I'm pretty sure these numbers will all go into each other, so it makes life pretty easy. I think that 144 goes into 432, but will somebody verify that for me? It does. So I can pull out a 144x squared, and I'm left with x minus 3. Plus, I think you can take out a 315 from 945. So 315 x minus 3 equals 0. So from there, I'm going to combine. I'm going to come up here. So the factored form would be 144x squared plus 315 and x minus 3 equals 0. Well, what do I know about solving when I'm factoring? Like, what do I need to do in order to solve for x now that I have these two parentheses? Yeah, I can set them both equal to 0. So I can set this equal to 0, and I can set this equal to 0. So if I set the first one equal to 0, it would be 144x squared plus 315 equals 0. Move the 315 over. What do you already notice about this? Like, what kind of answer do you think I'm going to get?
Which one? The first one?
Yeah.
I think maybe negative.
So if I divide, like 315 divided by 144, you get x squared equals like negative 2 point something. I don't know what it is, negative 2.5 or something like that. But then when you take the square root of a negative number, you end up getting an imaginary, like an I. So we can automatically rule out this one. So I'm going to get an imaginary answer, and I'm also going to say that x minus 3 equals 0, so x equals 3. So when you have something like this, you have the potential to get 3 answers, but only one of them will be correct. And I will say that, you know, like if you look at this one, you know you're going to get a positive answer, so just use that one because the other two will be imaginary or they'll be negative. And two things you can't have when you're talking about dimensions or volume: you can't have an imaginary dimension and you can't have a negative dimension. You can only have positives. So the height equals 3 meters. If you wanted to go back in and check it, like plugging in 3 for x, here, here, and here, you could go back and do that. I wouldn't give you one of these problems, I don't think, without a calculator. So you could go. But you can even do this without a calculator and still work it out.